Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce you to my guest today, Stephen Shapiro. Stephen is the author of the new book, Invisible Solutions. For over 20 years, Stephen has presented his provocative strategies on innovation to audiences in 50 countries. During his 15-year tenure with the consulting firm Accenture, he led a 20,000-person innovation practice. He is the author of 6 books and the creator of Personality Poker, a card game that has been used around the world to create high-performing innovation teams. In 2015, he was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. In 2017, he was a regular judge and mentor on the TLC Innovation reality television show, Girl Starter. Please join me in welcoming Stephen Shapiro.
Great to be here. Looking forward to this.
Yes. Well, Stephen, as you know, Work from the Inside Out is a podcast all about transitions, and clearly you have made amazing transitions in your career. You've done a lot of really interesting things. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for being here.
Well, my pleasure.
So tell us about some of the early years, where you started, and how that led to all the really amazing things that you've done over the years, and also how you made some of the decisions to engage in some of the different activities that you've done.
You know, it's interesting. In preparing for this or thinking about this interview, I realized there were lots of decisions I made, more than I had originally thought. I mean, I even went back to like when I was in college and I was working on an engineering co-op job. I was working in a computer manufacturing plant, big company that made computers. And I realized that was something I did not want to do. People would go to the same cubicle each and every day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. And I thought, oh no, just that's not me. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not how I'm wired. So that's how I ended up in consulting. And then I'm in consulting and doing some really cool work. And then in 1993, I get involved in something called business process reengineering. And I was one of the leaders of this practice. And it was awesome because I would go around and I would work with companies and I'd help them become more efficient. Business process reengineering was all around optimizing a company's business processes. And what I realized is that when you optimize a company's processes, they're going to downsize the workforce. So I was working on one project, 10,000 people lost their jobs because of the work that we were doing. And I just woke up and said, whoa, I can't do this anymore. So I walked off the project, took a leave of absence, and that was another transition. So I've had so many. I mean, I could keep on going for a while, but I'll just sort of stop there as I just realized that I always have to listen to who I am, like how am I naturally wired, like not being a cubicle person. But also I had to look at it from a value perspective. What did I want to contribute to the world? And I didn't want to help companies shrink and reduce jobs and hurt the economy, but rather I wanted to help companies grow. And that's how I got involved in innovation work.
So tell us more when you say innovation work, we hear that word used a lot these days. And describe, maybe unpack that a little bit for us. 'Cause I could imagine there's some people listening who might say, well, what does that look like? Can you give us a couple of examples?
Sure. So, I mean, to me, first of all, innovation is about growth rather than reduction. It's about creating jobs, improving the economy rather than shrinking and optimization. And we need both. Again, it's never a judgment call. Companies need to become more efficient. It's just not where I like to focus my energies because I want to help companies become more prosperous. Because I think if they're more prosperous, they create more jobs. And the means to that is relevance. So at the end of the day, to me, the key goal of innovation is to help a company remain relevant. How do I create products and services and have a business model that is relevant in the minds of customers, consumers, and clients? And so that's the work I do. The way we get there varies from company to company because each company and each industry has specific challenges. But the key thing that I've found is that it's figuring out how does a company differentiate themselves in the market? How can that differentiation be durable and sustainable over a long period of time? And then how do we engineer a series of questions that we work on, problems that we work on, opportunities that we work on, that if we solve them, are going to help us move forward? So that's pretty much my perspective on innovation. It's about relevance. It's about creating what the market needs and wants now and in the future rather than what they wanted in the past.
So how did you get there? How did you get there from those earlier years till now? What were some of the key areas or disciplines that you had to build to get there? Because it sounds like there's a blend of an understanding of marketing, but perhaps also economic markets or other disciplines. What were some of I'm curious, like what did you study in college and
Yeah.
what were some of the building blocks to get there?
So I'm actually an engineer. So in
Oh,
college,
okay.
I was an industrial engineer in college, which basically was all around computer manufacturing productivity. So what I learned was statistics, probability,
Mhm.
optimization, simulations. How do we make computer manufacturing plants or manufacturing plants more efficient? And so what was interesting is, so that was all around process improvement for manufacturing. And when we were working in reengineering, which was a handful of years later, that was the same concepts. It was still about process improvement work, but it wasn't for what we call blue collar work, the manufacturing. We actually called it initially white collar productivity. How do we take the concepts that we use in manufacturing productivity and apply it to everything? How do we apply it to call centers? How do we apply it to sales? How do we apply it to marketing? But it was all about efficiency. So, mentioned this project I was working on where I walked off and took a leave of absence. I didn't leave Accenture. I just took a leave of absence, and I took a 6-month leave of absence. And during that time, I really reflected, what did I want to do? I loved going around to companies, and I loved helping them think differently, and I loved helping companies be successful, but I wanted to help them grow rather than shrink. So it wasn't like I had to completely blow up everything I was working on. It was really the content had to shift. And so I focused on innovation and growth. And so
Right.
then I had to surround myself with a lot of smart people so I could become better at it. I also had to recognize that as an engineer, I brought a unique spin to innovation because most of the people thought about innovation as this right brain creative endeavor where you're sitting on high mountains coming up with kooky ideas and or sitting on the ground smoking a joint and looking at the clouds or whatever.
Right. Right.
That's what most people thought it was. And I realized, no, it's actually a disciplined process. It actually is a process, just like all other processes. And so I took my process engineering experience and I re-engineered the innovation process and came up with an efficient innovation engine. And that's what I've been doing for the past almost 25 years now.
Wow. Yeah, that's helpful. So so for many years you were doing that under the umbrella of Accenture. And you did take that 6-month break to kind of reevaluate, reassess, and reflect. You
Yes.
went back to Accenture. What was it like when you went back? How did you approach things after? Because I've had a number of guests who did something like that, where they kind of took a pause, and usually the pause was something around, they either hit a wall or they hit a point where they said, you know what, something's not feeling right, I need to take a pause and do some reflection. So I'm curious, what was it like when you went back? How did you do things differently, or how did you approach things after that break?
So, it's interesting because I'd love to say I came up with this idea for innovation and everybody's like, woohoo, let's go do it. And it was actually exactly the opposite. I mean, so I basically during the 6 months sort of formulated what I wanted to focus on: company growth, innovation. And you have to understand, in 1995, innovation wasn't a word that was used anywhere really outside of the R&D department. But that's what I want to do: is how do I apply just as we took manufacturing productivity and applied it to every process, I wanted to take the innovation processes that were used in product development and bring it everywhere. And so I remember talking to a number of the partners at Accenture say, hey, I've got this great idea. What if we created a practice around innovation? And the response I got was blank stares.
Yeah.
And I remember some people said, well, that's a great idea, just not here. Go to another company and do it. And so it took me a little while. And so my leave of absence actually continued while I was trying to sell it. And eventually I met somebody who thought it was a brilliant idea. As it turns out, at that time, he was inheriting a new group of 20,000 people. And he asked me to basically run the innovation aspect of it. And that's how it all came about. So
Wow.
It's a matter of timing. It's a matter of meeting the right people. It's about having people believe in you. And fortunately, I'd been there long enough and built up enough credibility that even if I had a kooky idea, I could get enough people to buy into it that we created something which I think was some of the coolest work I've ever done in my career.
So one of the keys, it sounds like, to being able to sort of return back to the fold, so to speak, with a, quote, kooky idea, even though you didn't think it was kooky, was you had the relationships, you had the trust, you had the credibility already in place, and you were able to then share some ideas that might have seemed maybe a little risky to some of the other players, but they were willing to, let's say, take a chance because they trusted you and they believed in you.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big part of it. And I think also what I learned through the process is I needed to reframe the way I was positioning it. Well, people say, do what you love and the money will follow. And that's totally wrong. I mean, if you're lucky, maybe, but really what you want to do is, do what creates value for others, and then the money will follow. Now, look, you have to like it. You have to be good at it, or at least be able to partner with people to do it. But I've always used that sort of, I call it my passion, skills, value model, which is you got to love what you do. You got to be good at it, or be able to at least partner with people or you can eventually become good at it. But it has to create value for others. It can't be something that you value, but it has to be of value to the world. And so I had to change the way I was positioning things. It wasn't always like, hey, here's a cool idea. It's like, here's the upside. Here's what's missing. Here's the competition. Here's how it can be better. And I became better at the pitch in terms of getting my message out. So it was a combination of things that helped.
Right. So a combination of the trust that you had with these folks. You'd been already working with them for, many, many years. You had the relationship, but you had to also understand where they were coming from and to be able to reach them where they were coming from so that they could understand what it was that you were trying to create. So it wasn't just that you were trying to butter them up or sell them. I think of, selling, lawn chairs to Eskimos or something like that. You were selling them something you really believed in, but also trying to get them to see it in a way that they would be able to see it. And I think that, whenever we are trying to, let's say, prove ourselves to somebody or trying to get somebody to see something we want them to see, I think too often people are so busy trying to prove it from their perspective without trying to put themselves in the other person's shoes. And so it sounds to me like that was a big part of the equation, was you had to walk in their shoes in order to be able to really, build that bridge and work together to really step into that and get that buy-in.
Yeah, I think the key is to have credibility, empathy, and logic. And what happens in a lot of cases, we tend to focus on selling the solution rather than selling the emotion. So I had credibility, and equally important is I had credibility with people who had a lot of credibility.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that credibility piece going in there. But if I'm selling the solution, I will never be successful. I have to sell the emotion. What is the pain I solve? What's the pain they don't know that they have? And it's not always just, wouldn't this be great? We're going to grow the business, but what's the downside if we don't do something? And it's really just mastering that art of the pitch, which is an important part of innovation.
Yeah.
Is being able to sell, great solutions to problems.
Yeah.
But it's not about the solution to the problem. It's about the emotion in many cases.
So so in the consulting world, this was something you were doing as you were going back into an environment with people you had already worked with. How do you do that with somebody, for example, that you don't perhaps already have that rapport with or don't know? I think about people who might be listening to this who, let's say, are looking for their next position, their next role, or maybe they're walking into a new networking kind of situation, and they're both wanting to show up at their best, but also wanting to be seen or appreciated in a certain way. How do you step into one of those newer situations?
I think the process is the same. I mean, it's just maybe you have to build credibility in a different way. You
Mm,
don't necessarily build credibility with your resume and your CV and laundry list of all the things you've done, because that doesn't really build credibility.
yeah.
I think my biggest credibility builder in this whole process was finding somebody who already had credibility. And
Aha.
I do think that it's like, even in my business, most of my business comes to me not because of me, but because of someone who has credibility who recommends me.
Yes.
So I think it's just, our network of people that we have is really important.
Hmm.
It's always better to, like, if I'm trying to sell a speech, for example, for me to cold call someone and say, hey, I work with this company and that company and I'm awesome and look at me on stage and woo,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I know someone who happens to be friends with or colleagues of the person who's the decision maker, and that person says to them, hey, by the way, this Steve Shapiro guy, he's the real deal. You want to bring him out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now we've already broken down that first barrier of credibility.
Right.
Now we can move to the empathy. And what I do is I make sure I understand the pains they have. I don't say, okay, well, here's what I do. I go give a speech and here's the 5 things I'm going to talk about. They don't care about that.
Right.
But I'm going to talk about, look, here's what's going on in your industry. I understand you've got disruptions that are taking place. Here's what's happening. I understand that this is a challenging time. And then once I have them understanding that situation,
Right.
now I sell them the solution. But you can't sell
Sure.
somebody a solution until they understand the problem.
Right. Right. I love that. So, so today you're doing a ton of speaking. From what I understand, there is definitely no grass growing under your feet. Um, you travel a lot to speak and to share a lot of your perspectives and your insights with people all over the world. And you're a prolific writer. You've written, I think, 7 books now. Am I
6 books
right?
here.
6.
Well, actually, if you include the
I've
one,
already got you on your 7th.
I'm working on the 7th, but also if you include the one I wrote while I was at Accenture, yeah, then there would be 7.
Okay, see, I knew it. And I'm the proud owner of at least 2 or 3 of those books. Um, so, um, so tell us about the blend and the mix of all the things that you're doing today. So you're speaking, you're writing, you're consulting. Tell us about all those things and how did that come about that you started writing too? I'm curious.
So, it's interesting. In 1996, I remember, it was, at that time when I was, running this 20,000 person practice area. And we'd hire people to speak at our events. And I remember there's a guy, thought leader, Dr. Michael Hammer, just one of the most brilliant people. I mean, at the time, he had the second best-selling business book of all times called Reengineering the Corporation. Time magazine called him one of the 25 most influential people in the world. And so I got to work with him and I got to see him in action, and I just loved him on the stage, great energy. And he had this book and he traveled around, he gave speeches. And so I remember, and I found the notebook where I wrote this. I said, this was November 1996. I said, in 5 years, I want to be the Michael Hammer of the next wave. That's exactly what I wrote. The next wave was whatever. And innovation, I think, was sort of the next wave. And so 5 years, almost to the day, and I found this notebook after I actually made the change. Almost 5 years to the day, my first book came out. I left Accenture and I started giving speeches and traveling the world and doing all of that. So it was interesting how I set this intention. And it happened without me actually trying to engineer it. And so that's what I do right now is I write
Yeah.
speeches, I give speeches and basically, but I'm not a speaker. I help companies grow their business.
Hmm.
And I do that through speeches. I do that through books. I do that through software. I do that through training. But my goal is to help companies grow by whatever means. I mean, especially like right now, there's a whole bunch of things going on in the world where events are being canceled because people aren't gathering. So being a speaker, if that's all you do, is a challenging time. But if you are an advisor and you can do things
Right.
virtually, online, have books, then it's it's a different game, different business model.
So I understand the distinction between being a speaker and being an advisor, and you use speaking as a vehicle for advising people.
That's one of them. Yeah. I mean, I consider myself to be an innovation and problem solving expert.
Right.
And then I use consulting, advising, training, e-learning, books, and other programs to deliver that content. So for me, we need to understand what's the problem we're solving. And I solve the problem of relevance,
Right.
solve the problem of disruption.
Hmm.
And the way I do that is through all these other vehicles.
Yeah. Wow. And just, I am people are listening to us right now, but you and I are doing this via video. So I'm looking at you as we're speaking, and I can tell that you just love what you do.
I feel very, very blessed to do what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, I get to travel around, meet interesting people, go to interesting places. But I think at the end of the day, what I really like is I get to make an impact, and I get to make an impact in a lot of places, not just in one industry or one group or
Yeah.
one company. But I get to travel around and hopefully touch thousands, tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands of people at any period of time. So that to me is what makes it really great. Just like with what you do here. I mean, you do your podcast, but it impacts people all over the place, not just in one geography or one company, but it's everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's very rewarding in that way, and it's nice to it's nice to know that these things are recorded and that people can access it, whenever they need to. So when you think about other people who you and I both want to be having an impact on, and they're trying to make their next best move, or trying to make some sort of a transition to grow. And I'm thinking both, I guess more on an individual level at this moment. What would you say, or what would be your best advice to somebody who is considering making a move? I think a lot of people they get maybe stuck when they've reached a certain point in their career. They get accustomed maybe to a certain lifestyle, or they have a certain level of, let's say, financial obligations or responsibilities, or maybe they're fearful in some way. I mean, right now we're living in times that feel very uncertain, in particular, but they're just not sure maybe how to think about making a move or making a change. And I think that, with the mindset that you're sharing with us around innovation, um, and around growth, that I'd love to hear a few words of wisdom from you, around what might you advise someone who's thinking about making some changes.
I don't think there's a silver bullet in any of this, but I do think that a couple things is obviously when you can, I believe sometimes that simplification is the best innovation. So
Mm,
simplifying your life, I think, is a good thing. Like you said, obligations. We tend to think that necessity is the mother of invention, but the problem is it creates stress and urgency, and it's actually not the right type of invention. I find that laziness is sometimes the best. Laziness is the father of innovation, is one of my beliefs. And so, what ends up happening is when we're in an environment where we don't need something as much, we're able to make better decisions. So, simplifying your life is always a good thing as much as you can. Uh, and then just everybody's going to have their own strategy. Some people are going to say, look before you leap. Sometimes people are going to say, leap before you look. It's like, okay, well, which one's right? It really depends on what your tolerance is for
right,
risk.
right,
Uh,
right.
I think that the key thing is it depends on where you're going. So if you decide you want to become an entrepreneur, so like becoming like I did when I left Accenture, becoming a speaker and all that, it's my business. Recognize that just because you have something that you are great at doesn't mean your business will be great. So you can be the world's best speaker, but if nobody knows you, you're not going to have a very good speaking business. Mm-hmm. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're really in the marketing and sales business first and foremost, and then you're in whatever business you think you're in. And I think that's just really important. It's also important if you are working for a big company right now. So I've got a lot of friends who eventually want to become, let's say they're heads of innovation at a corporation and they want to become a speaker or consultant. And I say, look, while you're at the company and you have a business card with a big company name on it, like when I was at Accenture and I had a card that said, leading a 20,000 person practice at Accenture, boom, it opens doors. People want to talk to me. That's great. The second I leave and it's like steveshapiro.com, people are like, well, who's this bozo? So leverage what you have as much as you can while you're there. And I think that helps a lot because the company that you're with, if it's a big company, probably has a lot more credibility than it will be if you're on your own. Now, if you're just looking to change jobs, that's a different conversation. So that's what I'm saying. It's not as one size fits all.
No, I agree totally. And I think you make some excellent distinctions there in terms of you might be really good at something, but once you become an entrepreneur, you do have to put on that marketing hat regardless. And I think being a coach myself and knowing a lot of coaches, I know that this is where a lot of people in my field struggle because they're great coaches, but they struggle with the marketing and promotions part of the business. And so that you just pointed out a very clear-cut example that I see in my industry quite a bit. And also the distinction between once you leave a large company and let's say, hang up your own proverbial shingle, there's some significant distinctions. So I think what you're also suggesting is be prepared as best as you can for, that once you're no longer that little fish in the big pond, you're not going to become a big fish all of a sudden. Right.
It happens. It's rare.
Right.
And what ends up happening is we look at the people who did that. Oh, so-and-so started their own business and now they're a trillionaire and they're doing this, that, and the other things. Like, yeah, but what about the 999,000 people who did the same thing?
Right.
It didn't succeed. So let's, there is something called survivor bias.
Yeah.
We go to conferences and I did this and it worked. It's like, yeah, but how many people followed that advice and failed?
Yeah.
We tend to hear about the survivors, not the people who didn't do as well. And so we just need to be realistic, but also not let that realism hold us back. Otherwise, you never make a decision.
Exactly. And I think also what you're pointing to here is to, or at least I'm thinking, to be clear about how do you define success? Is it just about the bottom line? Yes, we all have a bottom line we have to meet, but what are the other measures of success? What are the things that you looked at when you left Accenture? Was it just, I need to bring in this much in revenue? My guess is when you left Accenture, there were other things that you were looking for in your life or in your lifestyle that might have changed if you were no longer overseeing a team of 20,000 people.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point which is why, asking for advice or getting advice from other people is not always the best idea because we don't know the context. We don't know what it is that they've done in their life to design their life and what their needs and wants and desires are. So for me, when I left, I wanted to have a book, I wanted to speak, I wanted to travel around. And I will admit, I think at some level, there was an ego element involved, because when, you can be a speaker and it's all about you as the speaker. And, I don't think money was ever the main driver for me. It was freedom, it was flexibility, and it was, to some degree, if you want to call it, fame. So I guess those are 3 F's. I didn't plan it that way, but that's what came out. But, as time went on, I realized the last part was irrelevant. It was really about impact and leverage and flexibility. I really value the ability to have a different kind of lifestyle, and it goes back to where we started the conversation, where I decided I didn't want to be in a cubicle 5 days a week.
Right.
That to me was the antithesis of flexibility. Now, not only like at Accenture, even though I wasn't in a cubicle all the time, I didn't get to choose who I worked with, where I went, what work I did. Now I get to choose. I can turn down work. I can turn down jobs. I can do whatever I want. Obviously, there's ramifications for that, but
sure,
I get to choose.
And you get to be the bottom line decision maker. You don't have to check 3 levels above you, or there's nobody. You are it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So something else that we talked about prior to this interview was something you had said, something that I wanted to just ask you about. You had said, "Don't pivot, divot."
Yeah.
I wanted to include that in this. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, I think for a lot of people, the grass is always greener. So whatever you're working on, there's always something new to go to. And, in the world, we're always talking about pivoting. Pivoting basically just means you're doing this today and you're going to change direction. You're going to move in a different direction. So, and I think that seems to be the vogue thing, is pivoting.
Yeah.
And people always ask me, well, what's your next pivot? It's like, well, right now I'm not pivoting, I'm divoting.
Yeah.
And if you're not a golfer, basically a divot is when you're not a good golfer, like I am, and you go a little too deep. The divot is you basically go too far in the grass and you create a big hole where your club was swinging. So you're going deep, deep, deep. And that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm pivoting and divoting. So I'm divoting my content. So if you look at a lot of authors, what they will do is they have a book, and then their next book is about a totally different topic. And then their next book is about a totally different topic. Whereas mine is actually the same topic I wrote about in 2011 in my previous book, Best Practices Are Stupid. But it's on one very, very small piece of that book. There was a section on asking better questions. It was a small piece on asking better questions. And people are like, wow, that's intriguing. How do you do it? And so it's almost like 9 years ago, I started working on that next book, going deeper into that one small piece of Best Practices Are Stupid. And that's how this new book came about. So I went deep, deep, deep into the content. At the same time, I'm pivoting the delivery vehicle.
Yes. So, tell us about that.
Yeah. So we're creating tools, we're creating videos, we're creating online learning programs. We're creating a whole bunch of different ways to get the message out. So instead of it being primarily speaking as the way of delivering the content, it's now diversified. I haven't really pivoted. I've more diversified, which to me is a different thing again.
Yeah.
And the language becomes important. We say pivot, which means change direction. I'm not changing direction. I'm actually just diversifying. I'm increasing the ways in which I can deliver my content, yet my content is going deeper. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Randy Pennington who once said, people buy the Coke, not the Coke machine. And what ends up happening is a lot of people say, well, I'm a trainer, I'm a speaker, I'm an advisor. It's like, well, that's the delivery vehicle. That's the Coke machine. What's the Coke? What's the message? What's the content? And how do we get deeper into that area of expertise? And so my divot is into the Coke, the deep, deep, deep into problem solving and innovation. The diversification is in the way that I deliver it.
Nice. And there's also an app connected with Invisible Solutions, your new book.
Yeah, it's actually not technically an app, because an app means you go to the App Store, but it is a mobile responsive website. It's probably the best way to put it.
Mobile responsive website. See how technical I am. Okay.
Here's the main difference is, if you want somebody to use your app, they have to go to an app store, download the app, create an account, and all that other stuff.
Okay.
With the mobile responsive website, there is no app. You just go to a website. In this case, Invisible Solutions Tools. If you go to invisiblesolutionsTools.com, you will be able to sign up for the tool that supports the book. And the tool we have right now is called the Lens Browser. So the book,
just
to step back.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So the book is based on 25 different ways to reframe a problem.
Yes.
And the Lens Browser is a way for people to navigate those 25 lenses as easily and quickly as they possibly can.
Yes, yes, yes. That's very exciting.
It is. It is. I mean, especially where people, look, first of all, you have to meet people. It comes back to our earlier conversation. You need to meet people where they are, what they want.
Yes.
Just because we think something's a great idea doesn't mean it's a great idea. And, the goal here is to always create content and delivery vehicles that meet people where they want to be. And some people want to be in their mobile phone. Some people want to be on their desktop. Some people learn by doing. Some people learn by being told something. So we just need to give as many different ways so we can hit as many different people.
Well, I have a feeling, Stephen, that you're going to reach a lot of different people with this new book. And my hope is that people listening to this will also be curious enough to explore some of your previous books as well, because at least the ones that I'm familiar with and have read, they're fabulous. So tell us what's next. I know that you're working, that you're promoting Invisible Solutions now and all that comes with it, and there's a lot with it. What's coming up soon?
I would say that the key thing for me is to divot into Invisible Solutions as much as possible.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Our mutual friend, Adam Leffert, he's the guy developing all of the tools.
Yes.
He's working on some new tools, which will be even cooler and more powerful. I'm very excited about that.
About all that.
Creating online programs. I also have something called Innovation Intervention. And Innovation Intervention is a deep dive. You go to innovationintervention.com. Is a deep dive into innovation. It's an 8-week intensive online program where, yes, you get videos, but you also get deliverables you have to create. You get access to me. And so the goal is at the end of 8 weeks, you didn't learn something. You transformed your business. And it's a very, very powerful delivery vehicle that's different than pretty much anything else out there. And the people that have gone through it have found incredible results. So I'm very excited about that, especially where, we don't always want to be on planes or traveling around, or, people aren't gathering at events as much anymore for a variety of reasons.
Right.
So the more I can deliver my content virtually, digitally, or locally is a better thing.
That's great.
Working on mastermind groups. How do I get people together? Live in Orlando, Florida.
Right.
People love to come to Orlando. So
right.
Why not fly here and spend a weekend with me? That'd be awesome.
Well, so it sounds like you've just invited all of us to Orlando.
Yes.
Great. Well, this is great. So, Stephen, what is the absolute best way for people to reach you?
If you go to steveshapiro.com, that's my website. You can contact me, and that's sort of the navigation to everything else. So like the Invisible Solutions book is there. My other books are there, my speeches, videos, and all. So I would say that's the starting point.
Okay.
And then from there, you can branch off into whatever is of interest.
Great. Well, we will have all the links and everything in the show notes. I am so excited about everything that you're offering and all the things that you're up to. I'm actually going to go check it all out myself. I actually already have a copy of Invisible Solutions, and I also have some of the technology that Adam's developed for you. So I'm very excited about all that. So thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story and also some of your really wise advice. I love the way that you have framed a lot of your ideas, and I think people are going to find a lot of value in this conversation.
Well, excellent. And what I loved about this for me is it was a great chance to reflect on 30 years of doing what I'm doing, and it wasn't the typical conversation where it's always around innovation or something. I love that it's a much more personal conversation. So for me, this is wonderful.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Stephen Shapiro. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his professional path to where he is today. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 070. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Stephen, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoularloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button or follow the instructions provided there. Thanks so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.